I am N.S. Venkatraman. I am speaking on behalf of Nandini Consultancy Center, a chemical engineering and chemical business consultancy organization based in Chennai and Singapore. I am submitting my thoughts on the ongoing global climate crisis, particularly with reference to the COVID COP27 in Egypt, and what we think are the appropriate solutions to overcome the present grim global climate crisis. The Glasgow meet, what we call as COP26, took place in 2021 with much fanfare, with leaders of almost all countries pledging to reduce and eliminate global emission as early as possible to prevent global warming and prevent climate crisis. The Glasgow meet ended with high hope that world climate crisis will be overcome sooner or later, and hopefully sooner than later. Subsequently, Egypt Climate Meet, what we call as COP27, has been organized with the concerns about global climate crisis being not less than what was there in the Glasgow Climate Meet. The ground reality is that practically nothing has been done in significant way to improve the global climate scenario in the last 1 year subsequent to the Glasgow meet. And on the other hand, the conditions have only further deteriorated due to various man-made reasons and man-made conflicts. Now the world has a desperate situation as far as the climate is concerned. The world is already facing the global climate crisis as global warming conditions continue to take place with unpredictable climate targets and unpredictable climate changes and monsoon conditions. There is huge anxiety in the world today as no one is able to predict the monsoon conditions and heat level in different months and in different areas and in different regions with any reasonable level of accuracy. The situation is so desperate now that the UN Secretary General at the COP27 summit in Egypt said that the planet is fast approaching a tipping point and the climate crisis is approaching irreversible level. He went on to say, with a sense of helplessness, that the world is facing stark choice and all countries now have to work together. And he declared that the world have to choose between survive or perish conditions in the coming years. Now, this is a desperate call from UN Secretary General, which shows the seriousness of the situation. Now, what is the focus on solution for climate crisis so far? So far, globally, the highlight of the discussion on climate crisis is that use of fossil fuels like crude oil, coal should be drastically reduced and completely eliminated in the course of time. Further, the goal should be to replace fossil fuel like coal, crude oil for the use as the energy source or as feedstock by substituting eco-friendly energy source such as renewable energy, wind and solar power, use of hydrogen, and so on. While scientists are feverishly working to develop the eco-friendly technologies to substitute fossil fuel like crude oil and coal, it appears that the world still has a long way to go. In such circumstances, the statement of the UAE president that UAE will keep producing fossil fuel so long as there is a market for it in the world is very significant and even it's alarming. UAE president has been honest enough to say and to confess that he has no plans to reduce the production of fossil fuel, and ball is clearly in the court of the consumers of fossil fuel and not in the court of the producers of the fossil fuel. What is particularly curious is that the next year's edition of the Global Climate Summit is scheduled to be hosted by UAE, and UAE president has categorically said that UAE will not reduce the production of crude oil and will not reduce the production of fossil fuels. These are really a curious situation. Now, there is a need for demand reduction for fossil fuels that is absolutely important. Obviously, the demand reduction for fossil fuels is a sure way of reducing the consumption of fossil fuel in the world that will improve the climate conditions. One way of reducing consumption of fossil fuel is to develop alternative eco-friendly energy source on which development work are underway. However, one should not ignore the fact that the higher demand for fossil fuel and energy source are happening due to the steady growth in the world population. With more mouths to feed and more people demanding greater share in the world resource, obviously the demand for fossil fuel and energy source cannot come down so long as the world population keeps on increasing. Now, there is a need to focus on population control. It is surprising that in all the climate meetings that have taken place around the world in the past, no one appears to have spoken about reducing the population growth or even need for reducing the population growth, particularly in developing and underdeveloped countries to solve the climate issue. While the developed countries like the United States, European Union, Japan are keeping the population under check. However, in countries like India, population growth still remains very high, and with India likely to emerge as the most populated country in the world very soon. While the developed countries have nearly stable population, the industries and production centers in developed countries, which have high technology strength, are continuing to produce more and more goods and products to meet the increasing demand in developing countries, where demand is growing due to population growth and at the same time economic development. It is high time to recognize that countries with high population growth are also significant contributors to global climate crisis. Now, what is the solution? In several of the climate meet in the past, steps have been taken to provide financial support and incentives to work towards ozone depletion, etc., particularly for the developing countries. In the same way, perhaps it would be appropriate to give some incentives to developing and underdeveloped countries to reduce population growth. Such incentives can be in the form of technology support or financial support, which is absolutely important. The precondition to solve the global climate crisis today is to reduce the demand growth for the fossil fuel, because substituting the fossil fuel is likely to happen soon, but not very soon, so that to avoid a climate crisis. In such conditions, reducing the population growth is the only way and the sure way of overcoming the global climate crisis. Thank you very much.